Hello, everyone. Welcome inside the Red Earth Production Studios for this edition of YBMcast, powered by Game 7 Baseball, Game7Baseball.com. We're going to be out. It's World Series weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We'll be at the Cardinal game doing the parade. We'll be doing some live stream stuff with the kids at the parade on Game 7 Baseball's Facebook page. We'll have a live stream going of all the parade. It'll be a lot of fun. Then Friday, we'll be out at the ballpark. We'll be doing some live look-ins. We got our trivia. We got interviews all day with the 13s and 14s out there at Warrenton Athletic Complex. We'll have the Prime Sports mobile store out there on Saturday and Sunday, I believe it is. So make sure if you haven't subscribed to Youth Baseball Midwest, make sure you do it. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the dinger next to it. Get you notifications for upcoming episodes such as this. And why not? We hit dingers around here. That's what we do. And so make sure if you're going to be there at Warrenton Athletic Complex, 14U teams, come see us. We got some great stuff for you. That is Game 7 Baseball, man. Make sure you check it out. A lot of fun. All right. Today, though, in studio, I have joining me the head coach from the M.I.C.D.S. Rams, made a Final Four run, Mike Kraatz. Coach, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm enthusiastic about this opportunity.
We got a chance. First time we met was at the. You're gonna have to scoot up just a little bit there to the mic. There we go. Help out my engineer over there.
Yeah, you bet.
First time we met at the state championships, and got to chat and whatnot. It was an enjoyable conversation, and so I invited you on there. You go, could be dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, and it always could be with me. I promise, to keep it, mild with the language. I can control
Please.
that. But, some of the opinions,
That's okay. I'm all right with opinions.
Yeah, I've got plenty of those, honestly. Had we met last week, it probably would have been a bad idea. It probably would have been defending some of my sentiments to my AD.
Oh, so, man.
We're good. I'm ready to roll.
Well, let's start off. I want to do this because I think it's, an interesting conversation. You watch in high school baseball. Is it, coaching high school kids today, how different is it than maybe when you were playing? Do you think it's different? I know it's a different perspective. Especially, and then you got difference in public school, private school. You're at a private school, different expectations. What's it like?
Yeah, I would say, just going back to, I graduated high school in 2001, and I played Legion ball. And at the time, it was Legion, SLABA, St. Louis Amateur Baseball Association, for those who don't know. And I've talked to several who don't, even though it's here and it's still good. But at that time, you had the gamers starting to formulate. You had the prospects who had been around for a few years at that point. Strickland had the Pirates, rolling a little bit at that point as well. But then that grew so quickly. And by the time I got out of college, all of a sudden, it wasn't a given that you were either going to play for your local Legion post or for the local SLABA team. But then, you fast forward to now, and I've just missed a lot of years in there. But it's those two forms are, I'm sad to see what it is and isn't, and I know that was really vague, but ultimately, club baseball has created a lot of opportunities, but there's still a brand of ball that your high school coach might value. And it might not fall into alignment with where you play your summer ball, wherever it might be. And then now, I'd say even the training, because back when, all the training was under one roof. Jerry had his whole staff under one roof, and it was the who's who. Rick had the same thing. I know the gamers had, have had, something very similar. But now there's more of like, even in the club realm, you pay for training, but it's still a la carte. So you might get your arm care, your strength and conditioning in at two different facilities after a practice at a third site. So I guess just to put it simply, there's just a lot of opinions, voices, methods, thoughts swirling through our kids' heads. And coaching, you funnel that into what a high school coach's greatest, maybe balancing act is. It's making your program make sense to everybody without it losing its integrity for what you're looking for. I'd say the most polarizing word in baseball right now is bunt. you know, not the cake, because that brings people together, but a bunt, it can divide communities, but whether to do it, not to do it. Yeah.
You get the fake, oh, I tried, coach.
Yeah, or the videos of kids just saying, I'm not doing it, or laying it down and walking to the dugout instead of, running down the first baseline.
I've not seen that. Are you serious?
I've seen a couple.
Okay.
I try to scroll past that. There's
There's always going to be that, small margin of things, right? I agree. I never considered how you phrased that, how you termed that with a high school coach, taking all of these concepts and not losing the integrity of your own program. Wow. Yeah, right?
Yeah, and I've been blessed to have met some of the people I've met in both of those, I'm going to say, areas for now. I got to, I had a front row seat to Rick Strickland for 10 years, and it was incredible. Rick, you start to think like Rick in terms of the training piece, but then, when you're listening to Rick, the trainer, the developmental, mind, and Rick, the baseball person, the on-field guy, as time has gone on, I think you can find yourself getting too saturated in the training piece and forgetting that it has to translate to the field. Because even just the structural piece, once you get into a business type, and I'm not talking about anyone's money, by the way.
Right.
You charge what you want, people pay it or they don't. I don't care. If I was in it for the money, I would officially be the dumbest person because I don't make any. Somebody's going to go, oh, no, you already are. I'm like, and I know his name. His name is Josh. But he'll hear it and he'll laugh or not. But you take something where kids are used to this structure where they show up to the facility, they grab their bands, they grab their rollers, they grab this, that, and the other, and then they start to do this, that, the other, then they touch baseball. Games are more adaptable. You have to be more adaptable. I might have kids roll up after a test and have 20 minutes before a game. After they hit, they might have 10, 15 minutes. You don't have 40 minutes for your routine. But then whether or not it is healthy for the arm, the shoulder, the body, if a kid believes that he needs 40 minutes to get his body ready to just throw, then he does.
I agree with that. I agree. I mean, that's just kind of the way it is. I think it's interesting as you bring that up, and I have said this before, and one of the, Coach Perkins, I've talked to him about this at different times and whatnot, and some of the other coaches from around the GAC. It's not an easy thing to, you may have all your kids and they represent 7, maybe 8 different club programs, correct? It's very difficult to get to know who do you know from that program, what do they think, what's their concepts. All of those things are involved in that, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And, the personalities, I think that's one thing that, of many, my time at CB with Mason Horn, I'll always cherish, because Mason, and he's so humble about it too, and he'll be, to the degree, he'll be annoyed I mentioned him, even though I'm bragging about him. Mason has his finger on the pulse He knows who's doing what, where they're doing it. And the only time Mason really gets frustrated is when it becomes a distraction in his program. And by distraction, I mean whether or not it works. Is it something where, because I want to make sure I don't throw any kind of negativity at any individuals, because I can't think of any.
You don't mean it that way.
I don't, not at all.
I understand.
But you might take, well, here, I'll just be more vague about it. You might have a stiff guy and Gumby standing next to each other. They do not need the same things to prepare.
Right.
You know, especially as now development in December, January, that's not what I'm talking about. When the other team is showing up and unpacking their stuff and changing into their cleats, and you start to funnel down into your game time, like from this, that, the other, IO, there's yours, umpires are getting carted up, where's our pitcher at, we have this much time. You know, that's when it comes down to managing a program, managing a day, a game, an inning, an out. These are just things that I have to know, that I have to know where I can turn and who's going to be ready when. And I know I'm all over. I think I just splintered off there at the end, but I have walked down to my bullpen and said, hey, umps are coming up. It's 5 minutes early. Do I need to stall? And by stall, do I need to, they're going to want to start 2 minutes before game time. I can make ground rules last a little bit longer.
I can chat him up.
Or, coach, no, he's ready to walk out of the pen. Then ground rules are going to take 30 seconds. Right. I won't even get chatty at the plate. But, that's, I think, managing your program and your personalities and then the internal, external supports, I think that's really become the balancing act for the modern high school baseball coach because it has to play.
And I think that's an interesting thing because with players that are coming back into your program, you have, of course, seniors that are graduating and whatnot. Do you do exit interviews or interviews coming in when you talk to the kids about, hey, what'd you do this summer? I mean, when I use the term interview, I mean, it's pretty loose in that respect.
Yeah.
You get a chance to talk to the player, hey, what was your summer like? What did you work on? Do you talk about those things?
We do. It's more informal, just because private, public, when I was younger versus now, the thing about even from CBC to M.I.C.D.S, and I was at Fox before CBC, and, I'll touch on that briefly, hopefully organically here in a minute, but the difference in cultures, academic, athletic, and then as they coexist, because it's not extracurricular anymore. It's like defined as co-curricular. Extension of the classroom, which means the traits, personality, character, it has to translate. You are who you are, whether it's studying or preparing to, to throw or bat, which is hard. I'm not saying I'm perfect at it or even good at it, but it's how it should be. M.I.C.D.S students, they are very particular about their time, and it's because they have to be, because the academic sacrifice it's substantial, and you have to see it to believe it, to the degree when Tim Canavan, my predecessor, who's a dear friend of mine and one of the best coaches in the area, he would talk to me about what he wanted to do and what he had time to do and the what's and whys, and I didn't understand. I just didn't understand what he was talking about. But he was my friend, and I trusted him. But, well, here I come, and it's like, oh, I get it now. Okay. Because even something as simple as they don't care, they don't show up. It's like, well, I'll get to the bottom of this. My first year. Like, hey.
He's in the library.
Yeah, he is studying. That kid was up doing 3 hours worth of homework to where early on, even some of, my assistant coaches, and I have been blessed with great staff, since I've been there, be like, man, they need to this, that, and the other in terms of just through like the baseball lens, just in that vacuum. It's like, well, it's AP week. And they were up, like 2 of them were up like until 5 doing homework and studying. So that's a degree of like, that's hard.
Yeah.
That's a level of toughness that I didn't have. you know, because their priorities are very on point. It's just sometimes it can have a weird translation to a sentiment expressed about baseball or to, you know, to the way a game might play out just because of
The fatigue factor.
the fatigue and it's
mental
more,
fatigue.
exactly. I mean, you just hit the nail on the head. I've had guys walk out after 4-hour AP tests and it's like, oh no. Like,
I got to do what, coach?
yeah, like, oh no. Like,
Yeah.
but the fact that they walk up there and give everything they have on that day, you know, it's admirable. And the older I get, the longer I'm there, and you know, the more I see, the more accepting, understanding I am. But then you also, you know, everything runs in parallel with one another. So the balance is, we still have to be competitive today. Otherwise, why play? And like I said, I got off on that whole tangent. But like, you go to a guy who isn't showing up to his training. Well, I don't see why he's upset. I pay for it. It's like, yeah, but maybe this person who's training you cares a lot about you, and you are a reflection of that product. You know, oh, I train here. Well, no, you don't. You just pay to train there. So even like maintaining those relationships with the trainers and there are great ones, really great ones. St. Louis has so many really good clubs, sure, but you know, private trainers. That there's really just a balancing act too there in relaying the sentiment to the kid.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you don't have to throw 90. Do you throw strikes with 2 pitches?
I love what you just said there, because we had a conversation this week with Diego Solares, Prep Baseball Report. We at the end of that, you know, we talked about that, because I'm very much about those things. If you're throwing 95, but you've, you know, and I'll say what I said there, killed 2 birds and walked 5 guys,
Sure.
you know,
Hit the bull.
you know, it really doesn't matter that you threw 95.
Right.
It doesn't really matter. It's still a matter of being able to throw strikes or to get guys or to induce swing and miss, as we say. You know, so that takes spin. And he was talking about those attributes as he's looking at that. Can you throw 3 pitches for a strike? You know, and
Yeah.
can you get that, you know, what's your spin? Those types of things I think are getting back into the conversation where I think we swung that pendulum so far to velocity. And I'm not saying velocity isn't good. It's where it is.
Yeah.
It's where it should be. But you're looking at this, and how do you translate that to a high school pitcher who's coming out of maybe a program that just demands velocity?
Right.
And I just want you to throw a strike, young man.
And it's, gosh, I just had 2 conversations with former players. They're both playing college summer ball right now in different leagues. Their names might slip. I just need to make sure what version of the story I say, because I told both of them I'm gonna throat punch them. But there it is. I also told them I'd never lay a hand on them, and they both beat me up. So, but it was more about self-belief. There it is. I was going to withhold all this information. Now you know everything. Where are the cuffs? You know. But the issue for me anywhere has been, you know, balancing that like confidence deal. So both of the kids I'm talking about should have a mountain of it. And they do. But it shows up and disappears in weird places that when you come out of a school like the one we have, you know, you pay the price anywhere in some way, shape, or form. If you go to a factory, a jock factory, let's just say, like that's not a thing, but it's a thing, right? Yeah, the academics might suffer, but there's something to be said for being in a culture where everyone is good because you're accountable, right? The academics, education is everywhere, knowledge is everywhere. So to each their own on that. You know, that really just comes down to work ethic everywhere. But like, for example, CBC is a good school. My dad went there. You know, I'm very proud of the roots there. But when you're Curtis Byrne or Christian Little and you're walking the halls and you're all right, but Caleb Love is the point guard. The head basketball Tatum is your basketball coach. Head football coach played. Pingle played in the NFL. There's 5 Ohio State receivers. Gabbert's your quarterback. It's like humility is a big deal. Where in those halls, it's so competitive always that status, like the CBC kids, from my observation, and I think a lot of schools that are very successful and have been for a long time, it's a benefit because they never get too caught up in their own clippings. Mm-hmm. Like, people are saying nice things about me all over the place. It's like they don't get caught up in that, and it's easy to get, enamored by that to the degree where you forget what it took to get that recognition. And wherever I was, going with that is, I'm sorry, we have good athletics on our campus, but you come to M.I.C.D.S. and you're going to pay for it. You don't have as much time to commit to the athletics piece because that's not what you're there for.
And I think that's where I think it's interesting too, as you say that. Then we talk about, say, a Brian Gould, who is a high-level athlete, and he plays for the Rawlings Tigers. I know their program. I like Aaron Jaworski and what they do there. Seem like they think about the player, they think about the kids, the staff and whatnot. But in that case, then you have to have some of that summer program there to really focus yourself on the development. As you come back to school, it's going to be a real challenging balancing act then.
Yeah, without a doubt. And Brian Gould's a good place to start for this conversation. But going back to even my first year to where we are now, where Brian, he's the guy. He's our guy. He's hurt. And I could do a whole segment about him and then even Cam Cooper. But Brian balances everything in his life as well as anyone. And a lot of those guys do, to the degree where the expectation, because I'll get there, because the state run, just to touch back on that briefly before we get to it again, if we do, is, if I can shut up long enough to hear your question, the state run exposed a little bit of the fractures in our program in terms of expectation. A win and loss records all of a sudden stopped becoming the priority. Like, wins weren't as neat, quote unquote, as they had been in the past because we had a goal. I told those guys all along, I said, I can see state, I can't see past it because I don't know what any of that looks like. But once they saw that, we're in the quarterfinal, we are going to the Final Four, behaviors got weird because the environment changed, right? The enclosure got a lot bigger to where you got to state. I got to be honest, it didn't feel like the end-all be-all tournament because all of us just had sensory overload, me included, and I got a lot to say on that. But now you snap back to interviews. Like, we're going to start the year, and this is the team expectation. This is the program expectation, the individual expectation. But allowing each player the autonomy to balance it in a way that he sees fit, that keeps him mentally stable enough to maintain his relationships, not putting me, being very certain to make sure he is doing that, so as not to put me in a situation where I might express a sentiment that puts the player between me and someone off campus. Mm-hmm. Like, we're going to go curveball heavy on this. Well, no, I need to throw 90. You need to land a breaking pitch. I'm not saying you don't need to throw, just conversations like that where the translation has to be on point and the kid has to know exactly what we're doing, why we're doing it. I would never just go turn it over.
Yeah, no,
by
I
the
understand.
way. It was just an example. But it's still, in terms of confidence, like you said, if you throw 95 and can't get out of the bullpen, what good is 95?
Right.
If you throw 85 and throw every day 85's looking like the new 95. Look at this Tennessee team. Leading appearance guy, I can't think of his last name, but it's that lefty with the awesome mustache. Kirby, I can't remember it. Connell?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think.
Really enjoyed watching him pitch. He's a mid to upper eights guy. I think he popped a couple of nines the other day, but he pitches. And nobody stepped foot on the mound more for the Tennessee Volunteers more than this guy. And it was the pitcher that got on the field, not the tools.
Not the thrower.
Yeah, not the thrower, there were no rankings, articles, grades, anything. Not that that's not relevant. But in the moment, you see the picture of the closer for Tennessee. He balks a runner over or throws his third, fourth wild pitch in 2 innings, and he's smiling ear to ear. The calm in that kid's mind, the culture in the dugout, on the field, the calm in that kid's mind, and the consistency. That everybody probably had that like hive intelligence piece at that point. I mean, he is calm as can be. 6-5, last game of the season. That's the incredible piece.
You've got to be able to do it mentally.
Yes.
And so there's the other part. So the run to state, and as you said, I think that's the curious thing to me because. As you're going back to some of these things and what you were talking about and with the kids and I believe these things very much. We talk about it a lot. We talked about it on the show with Mitch the other day, Mitch Thomas from the Hitting Zone. Mm-hmm. The body follows the mind. So to create the result that you are looking for, to have success, it all has to begin with how you prepare yourself mentally in any capacity, in anything you do, whatever you're doing, whether it be academic or athletic, because the body will only follow the mind in that respect. Your arm doesn't throw by itself. You don't leave your brain in the dugout. Some kids may do, maybe, I don't know, but
yeah. Yeah, or coaches. It's in the closet.
But and I think that's got to be the challenge in a situation where a lot of these kids maybe not have been in that position, and you as a coach maybe not been in that position, and working towards the experience of it, and all of a sudden, it move. I think it just like moves so fast anyway. How are you able to slow those things down? Look at the decision-making process and bring those things to bear, right?
Yeah, and the experience, student experience, that's something that it's a big deal because it's high school baseball, but it's high school baseball.
Yeah.
And you heard that I just said 2 different things. But for Brian Gould, for Eric Podgorny, Niedringhaus, Rollo, and company, and gosh, Cam, LJ's on his way. Henry Cordes, Clifford, Hutton. It was high school baseball. It was a college prep opportunity, and all those guys are playing in college. But not everybody in my program plans to play in college. So trying to find a way to express myself to my players where I'm not just the crazy baseball guy, where the non-college bound player, or even the guy that he'd never say it, he doesn't even want to be on the field. He's not ready. He's never going to be ready. It's just for the experience. And, from that to Brian Gould, to create the collective efficacy, to put everybody in the same mindset or at least on the same path forward, that's the balance as well, to where the run to state exposed some things to me that were not necessarily endearing about the program, the athletic culture on campus, and individuals. And that's from me to every member of my team, and that includes parents, that includes uncles, trainer, everybody, right? And me first. I always start with me. But, you get – we had some behaviors, and it's not terrible. I'm really painting this to be a lot worse than it is. I'm grateful that I got to see what I saw. Mm-hmm. Because if we go down there and a play here, a play there we win.
Right.
We come home with a ring. We're class 5. We return a lot. We got a good class coming up from the 8th grade. We're like, let's do this. But the issues that were exposed on the run, not on the run even, the week between the quarters and the semis, the issues exposed there in terms of where we need to grow, and we do, which is a good problem. We're ready to grow. They still would have been there.
Right.
We'd have just covered them with a Band-Aid that would have been a ring, and everybody would have been happy until you get to the point where it's a third of the way into next season, and entitlement starts leaking into the program again, and you're like, how on earth did I let this happen? So, yes, we didn't win it, but we have an opportunity now to kind of go back into the foundation of the program and fix leaks.
It's curious to me, as I think about this because I think one of the things that's interesting to me is I look across the landscape, and there's athletic directors, activities directors, whatever you want to call them. Some people I really like and how they do things. One of the guys that stands out is Sean Irwin over at Francis Howell. I think Sean Irwin runs that high school almost like a college program. The athletic department, the activities department. It feels collegiate in like a state school, that you would see at a Mizzou or a Missouri State and things. And I think it's very interesting. But I think it's interesting in that respect then to go back to an M.I.C.D.S. when you're talking about the athletic department and you're talking about how those things, how you prepare and whatnot. You have to model that maybe a little different as to a Notre Dame or a Xavier or some of these smaller schools that focus more on academics and things of that nature and how they balance and bring those two things together, right?
Absolutely. Even to the degree where, like, the recruitment piece, and I never leapfrog anybody if the player chooses to have, the club trainer as, somebody run lead, run point on the recruitment piece. I'm happy to fall in wherever the player is most comfortable, me falling, right? But yeah, you'll get some situations where there are schools that offer that your athlete can't, they can't go there. And that's not what they went to M.I.C.D.S. to prepare for. There was a vision, and it comes off smug sometimes when you try to relay it. I'll just be very, you know what I mean? But it's not,
but I'm talking about your athletic director trying to make sure the program, how does he run that athletic department? He's got to run it in a different facet just in that respect, right?
He makes sure our athletic director is really good at what he does, and he takes a lot. I actually here of late have had the idea that he protects me a lot more than I realize, even for as much of a pain as I can be to him.
Right.
On a seasonal basis or daily, because we're going to talk next week, and it'll be a good one. It'll be productive. But, yes, he provides. There's a lot of autonomy, but the hiring process, the interview process, he was very diligent before he hired me. I mean, he definitely checked references, and then he checked references referred to by to him by references on who I was, and what I was about and my character. So then, you get into, there were some things early on where he would, warn me of things I could run into down the road if you express the wrong sentiment about college, about being over the top. Hey, if you want to continue your career, then you'll go here so you can get on the field. Because calmly, politely, and very just, politely, with full conviction, families will say, then his career will end. And that's like, at first, it's like, because I had one, and I won't say his name because his family's phenomenal, and I love them all, but it's, he says, well, if the dad says, if this doesn't come to fruition with this school, he'll just go to this school because, they have the best business school in the country. And it was like, gosh, I'm really starting to dig back into my past where I was. I would have gone to a school without my major just to keep playing. But that's not good.
Right? It's a little eye opener, right?
It really is. So it's not meant savage in any way. It's not meant to be rude or dismissive. And I found with the people that I get along with the best, they speak freely. And if it hurts your feelings, that's kind of your problem. Like,
right?
Because I didn't say
Right.
anything I didn't mean. You need to have the mettle to have this conversation with me, because at the end of the day, we're talking about the kid and his future, not my ideas of what a ball player should look like. Because that's, there's no one mold.
Kevin says this all the time. Kevin Mulder, and he's talking to kids, and not just talking, but to the kids. He said, he looks at the player, and he said, would you go to that school if you weren't playing baseball? And that factors into that. Major, whatnot. Is that the school? Would you go to that school if it wasn't baseball? And I think we don't consider that near as much.
I agree. I agree. And, I watched, we all did, right? Especially us St. Louisans. The Tennessee thing was really fun to watch. And, Tony is from here. But so it was fun to watch. And the thing that really stood out to me was Tony was under some of these really phenomenal, greatest coaches of all time. He complimented Dave Van Horn, Joe M.I.C.D.S, my assistant, who you met, my assistant, which I feel I'm embarrassed to say it that way. My subordinate. That's just as bad. I hope he sees this. But he played for Dave Van Horn at Nebraska and speaks the world of the man. Tony speaks the world of the man. Tony was the recruiting coordinator at TCU under Jim Schlossnagle. But Tony, maybe elements of that stuck. Obviously it did. But Tony is so uniquely himself. And I think that's what I enjoyed watching the most was like, he stands on the top step, and that's the stoic piece. But when he reacts, it's genuine, it's authentic, and it's not distracting. The only people it distracts are the ones on TV, right? The people that are watching it on TV, announcers, people in the stands. You watch the reaction by his players to his reactions, they just trust him. They know him. It's just they don't react to it to the degree where it's been enjoyable to watch a coach who is so uniquely himself and so confident in doing so win the national championship, while not only he didn't break any molds, but he has definitely created a new one. Like,
right.
I'm going to use this, and I hope it's not too over the top, but for the moments even where I'm in my own head thinking like, man, you don't stand there, be a general. Like, Tony almost granted permission to be yourself as long as the foundation is relationships with your players.
Right.
And man, do they have that on point.
I think, that's an interesting point because, there has to be a foundation, and it has to be based on principles that are real, genuine, understandable. You set those boundaries, you set those things. And then if a coach then that's a building of trust within that relationship. How do I relate to that person, and can this person relate to me? How does a 18, 19, 20-year-old relate to me as a person or even as the head coach, and what does that relationship dictate?
Right.
Well, there has to be that foundation and principles in place for those things to work, and he has evidently been able to do that. And I think that's interesting when you talk about those things. He understands how that happens, and so therefore the relationship is good. And whether he reacts negatively about a certain situation or positively about a certain situation, it all comes from the same point that person goes, I know he wants me to be better. Right?
100%. And to kind of not to relate to two things, and like I said before, I do not know Coach Vitello.
Right. Right.
So
You're just looking. We're looking from the outside in.
We're not buddies. I keep saying Tony, and I'm going to keep saying it. But just so you all know,
just
this,
in case
this
he
isn't
might
like
text me sometime.
Yeah,
right?
no, I'm not. I don't want like one of his buddies.
Maybe
to see
he'll
it and
follow
be like,
me.
Hey, my CDS guy is acting like he lives in your basement. Like what? What is the deal? Like no, it's not. It's not like that at all. But it's they kept referencing the super team from 22. Mm-hmm. And we sat in Blytheville, Arkansas on our way home from South Haven because my son wants to play for Coach Vitello. Like it is just, I said, well, what if he goes to the North Pole? He goes, well, I like Christmas. So that's my 11-year-old. But so we're watching this intently, but they kept referencing that team. And the most incredible piece, because we talk about this at school, the self-regulation, decompression piece that everybody has to have and for different reasons. His guys are doing it. Blake Burke trying to slow time down by looking at the pitch clock. That's elite. Christian Moore, they had referenced that his reactions to bad at-bats is so much more evolved now, where you almost wonder, like, did losing in 22 win it in 24?
Sure.
Could they have won both?
That.
Could they? But I know this, without having spoken to those players, the announcers that had really made it seem like that was such a vital maturation
and maybe
experience.
even for the head coach.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And, you know, there were some St. Louis kids that were looking that way, or, you know, Fayetteville at the time who, you know, they were on the fence about it. Like, and I just, without names being thrown around, and because I don't want to go down that road, but it's, yeah, the attention divided, where it, the reflection of the sentiment expressed in the clubhouse and how it manifests on the field, because there were some pretty famous gestures thrown around in that postseason, and it was all passion.
Yeah,
it was all passion.
Yeah,
and it was fun to watch, and I was a big fan of that 22 team. I've been a huge fan of what he's been doing since he got there. But yeah, all of a sudden, these younger guys that saw that without a governor, without anything to keep you, you know, grounded or pull you back to ground when you lose it, when you lose your footing, it's chaos. And now you're at the mercy of the guy on the other end of the field, because you're not your best you right now. And to tie that back into velocity, what good is 95 if not only you can't throw a strike with it, but the more balls you throw, the more out of your mind you get. And we've seen that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just, you know, just to kind of bring that home, I think our state run ended the way it did so we can go back a few more times down the road and maybe take one or two.
Well, and that's the thing, you know, looking at next season, you got kids coming back. You know, how do you set everything in motion? Players to watch? What, you know, give us a little look. I know it's really, really early.
Yeah, you know, is it though? You know, and you know,
no, so not here.
You know, Brian Gould and I'll start with Brian because he's deserving of that. Mm-hmm. Brian Gould and I were communicating last night, and I had said something. He sent me something. I said something back, and then I said, "All right, I'll stop," because you know I was kind of texting the way I talk, where I'm like, "All right, stop." Just somebody put their hand over my face, so I stopped talking. But I said at the end, I said, "Hey, I'm done for tonight. Sorry, I can't find the off switch because something broke, you know, like something that needed to broke in Ozark, you know, and I see things a lot more clearly." So to touch back on you might have a 90% student, 10% athlete, not even ball player necessarily, who might look at me and go, "Well, you're nuts. Life isn't all about baseball." Mm-hmm. To which I would have a very complex response because I do have a family and I love them dearly, you know. So you're right. Life isn't baseball. Baseball isn't life. Is it? Isn't it? We don't need to go down that path. But now let's talk about my role defined by my athletic director. He hired me to be the baseball guy here. Right. So any job that a coach does in terms of translating, you know, the whys behind the whats of the game and making sure that everybody is comfortable and confident, that's because knowledge, everybody should have it. All coaches should know the game within a degree of one another, right? But then the relationship piece and making sure that your players, understand that they're cared about regardless of this, that, and the other. I think that's what separates the good ones from the great ones. And so Brian Gould and I had that talk. Brian Gould lost his right arm for a few months, and he gained a whole lot more in terms of character, leadership, and I could speak to that for a month straight.
Real quick,
Yeah.
just to that point, I thought it was interesting watching him at the state tournament. We got a chance to talk to him. I talked to him before in the summer before the season, and I know he felt you could see it, but what you could see was him understanding his role at that time. I can't play. I'm not going to play, but I'm going to be that guy with my teammates. And he was there everywhere, talking to the guys, upbeat, whatnot. You wouldn't have known he was hurt.
No. And it was so endearing to see that. Not that I didn't think the world of him before that, because I did. My son, the way he interacts with him, there's a picture of Brian resting his arm on top of Dominic's head. And the only reason it's not, I've got it. The only reason I haven't hung it on the wall in my office is because I don't have pictures of my own family in my office. So it would make me feel bad to make that the first one I hang up, but it might end up being the first one I hang up because, it's even from the coach's standpoint, it's still my connection to my family from back when. I remember my first game. It's my connection to every player I've had, everybody I've coached with. So it is meaningful to me because at the end of the day, baseball didn't bring me to more baseball. That's just kind of inherent. It brought me to the Goulds and the Cordises and the Coopers and the Podgornys and the Niedringhouses and the Rollo. Baseball made all of these friendships, relationships a possibility. So the level to which I appreciate the game. Yeah, baseball isn't life, but man, it sure has improved mine.
But it sure is fun.
It is. And to answer your question, and just to be a little bit, better interview than I've been, Brian, just period. He gets to have one name. He's Brian. He's back. Cam Cooper, somebody's going to win that lottery. They're going to offer him. They're going to say, I want to see what you do after a year of baseball. And somebody is going to luck out when they get Cam Cooper. Because you want to talk about a character plus just awesome personality. That he walks in the room now, lights turn on that haven't worked for years just because he is that uplifting. Not that any of the lights are out. But the LJ Triplett is coming back. I
really enjoyed watching him play baseball.
He's so good at baseball. Yeah. He's so good at baseball, and he keeps getting, trapped in that he needs to be bigger. He needs to be stronger.
Yeah.
And it's like, look.
He'll get there.
He'll get there. I said to Kevin, I think you were standing there, if somebody called me and said, Mike, I trust you to the degree where I'm going to take the guy that you think is flying under the radar. I'm going to take him right now, sight unseen. It'd be LJ Triplett. Like, guys, you're going to get an 18-year-old kid who's coming into his body. You're going to get a 19-year-old kid who has really figured it out. You're going to get a 20, 21-year-old dude who is just the best player on your field, and that's LJ. And, so then with the juniors coming back, Eric Lieberman, Tyler Enyard, those guys have really been working hard. Isaac Taylor is coming back for us. Those are three arms that I'm very much looking forward to. Watch out for some of these dual position guys or multi-sport athletes and dual position guys. You haven't heard of them, but you will. Jake Gennon is really good. We just got Dylan Arnold. He has moved here from California, So we'll see about that. And then the upcoming freshmen, I'm very excited about with Sam Dybel, Ford Werner, Elijah Powell, and there's a lot of them that, the program is balanced right now to the degree where when you go to schedule, like Tony never says no. Yeah, I'll play you 5 times, Right. But there are schools that are like, what do you got coming back? And I can say, like, I might have 3 freshmen on the field every day. but they're really good freshmen. And honestly, any team that Brian and Cam lead, I would take to play anyone because I have that much faith in what they do in the clubhouse when I'm not around.
There you go. Coach, that was fun.
Well, it was for me. I hope you all enjoyed the sound of my voice more than many do. I love it.
That was fun. I enjoyed it. Love conversation. That's what we do here.
Yeah.
Podcast, man. Talking baseball.
No,
That's what we do.
I've enjoyed it. This has been great. And when the camera stops, I've got like 4 more hours. I'm kidding. No, I appreciate coming on. I'm a big fan of what you all do. I love your content, and I wanted to throw this at you too. You covering Legion baseball the way you do, I love that. I love that because Legion and Slava, and when I was younger, that was a rivalry of sorts.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
but
yeah.
all the same, community matters. Communities matter. And I would love for those two leagues to, stay sustainable. I think the work that those coaches do, it's all voluntary. I think it's admirable.
It is voluntary, and I think some of the as I've heard some of the guys, I'm privy to some of the conversations. We work closely with the Missouri American Legion Baseball, the state chairman Tom Rhodes, and I talk to a lot of the guys that are running programs. And one of the best programs, I don't care if it's a club. It's as good a club as there is. I think is down in Washington, Post 218. Mm-hmm. Kent Gansey's running that program. They got all 4 of their teams. They have 2 freshmen, a junior, and a senior team. They're all over 500. And you have to, and people go, well, they're just playing other. These guys, they're playing some of the same tournaments all these other clubs are, and going and having success, winning games. They're playing similar teams. So they're not just playing all Legion at this point as well. So they're putting themselves in those positions as well. And last year, Sam Pauley, Adam Packa, you had Cannon Hibbs from Warrenton was on that Washington team. They made a great run into the Mid-South. Sam Pauley, I saw him at the state championships because I called the state championships. Sam Pauley was the best player by far. That kid is a stud, and he's at State Fair right now playing well. Started as a freshman. You get to there's a young man that I saw playing for Sedalia. He's